lynching in the West, happening right here in the Beehive State, right here in Utah. In 1925, Robert Marshall was lynched just outside of Price by a mob. Now, he allegedly shot and killed a sheriff deputy, but Marshall was never charged. For every crime, there's a story, and the truth matters. Here's ABC's senior crime and punishment correspondent, Marcos Ortiz, now with tonight's Justice Files.
Some call this a dark part of Utah's history. Robert Marshall was lynched based on statements by 8-year-old boys who never actually saw the crime. Now, he may have, but a mob got a hold of him before he could ever defend himself in a court of law.
Castlegate was a town that was owned by the Utah Fuel Company in Carbon County. It was a mining town.
In the early 1900s, Castlegate became a town just north of Helper. Its mines were known to have the finest coal in Utah, and it was the main source of income for men in Carbon County. The county was a melting pot. The mines attracted immigrants like the Italians, Greeks, and Eastern Europeans. A handful of black families also ventured to the west from America's Southland. Among those was Robert Marshall. This is believed to be him with his family in Colorado.
And Robert Marshall was a 40-year-old itinerant worker. He had been hired recently to work in the mines. And he had been pretty immediately branded as a troublemaker.
Historically, unions quite often clashed with mine owners in Carbon County. This is from a riot on the streets of Price. Workers fought over wages and working conditions. It was under that environment that Marshall met J. Milton Burns, Castlegate's town marshal.
Blacks at that time was the lower rung of people there, and he was just giving Marshall a hard time because he felt that Marshall was acting like he wasn't supposed to.
In early 1925, Marshall had been arrested for shooting another man in Moab, but charges were dropped when prosecutors called the shooting justified.
So one day in 1925, he was at the local post office reading a newspaper, and the deputy sheriff was named Milton Burns, and he entered the post office, grabbed the gun away from Marshall, and there was an altercation.
Those who saw the confrontation claim Marshall was upset and told Deputy Sheriff that it was his constitutional right to carry a gun. Soon after the confrontation, Burns, who also moonlighted as a night watchman at the Utah Fuel Company, was ambushed and shot several times as he made his nightly rounds. He later died at the hospital. Statewide, the shooting of the town marshal made headlines. The local newspaper claimed there were witnesses.
Well, those witnesses turned out to be a few white boys under the age of 12 who claimed that they had seen all of this transpire and claimed that they had seen Marshall escape into the countryside.
Lacey, who grew up in Price, befriended one of the boys later on in life. He says the boys taunted Marshall using the N-word.
He kept yelling at him. The two boys did, and then they ran off. And right after that is when Marshall killed Burns.
But no one actually saw the shooting, and for the next 3 days there was a manhunt. The sheriff and deputies searched the hillsides for Marshall. Finally, with the help of an informant, Marshall was arrested at his cabin. Authorities claimed he confessed.
There were 6 men who put Marshall into the car. And so they just surrounded him in the back seat and in the front seat of this car that was driven by Henry East. He was widely known to have been a member of the Klan, even though the KKK was not ultimately deemed responsible for the lynching of Marshall.
In 1925, the Ku Klux Klan was alive and well in Carbon County and other parts of Utah. Their burning crosses were often seen on the hillsides of the county, and many of those in the mob were members of the KKK.
His father had also been killed in the line of duty, and the person who killed him had never been brought to justice, and so there was widespread commentary that this was not going to happen a second time to the same family. News spread really rapidly of Marshall's arrest. There were about 50 cars full of spectators and members of the posse who began driving toward Price.
At the courthouse, they found Marshall in the back seat of the sheriff's car. East went inside, leaving Marshall and 5 deputies outside.
They were overtaken by about a dozen men, who then took Marshall and drove him about 3 miles southeast of Price to a ranch that was located near the river.
About that time, a 16-year-old and his father walked into the town mercantile. They saw the commotion.
Dad was 16 years old and walked into a general store with his father, my grandfather, in 1925, and they saw a man buying rope. And they said, "What's going on?" And the man said, "There's going to be a lynching." He said, "There's going to be a necktie party."
Tomorrow night, in the last lynching in the West, the mob takes Marshall to the hanging tree. Hundreds of people watch, including Utah's future governor. For the Justice Files, Marcus Ortiz, ABC 4 News.